The sun blazed high over the rooftops of Awka City, yet the woman in a fitted white lace gown walked barefoot down the dusty road. Her back was straight. Her steps were steady. Behind her, 4 black SUVs followed silently at a respectful distance. People stared. Children pointed. But she didn't flinch. Madame Kemdalam was a name everyone in Anambra knew. Wealthy, powerful, untouched by hardship. Yet every Sunday without fail, she walked 10 full miles to church. Why is she doing this? Mama Ifeoma whispered to the woman beside her at the roadside. She has money to fly to that church if she wants. But see her, sweating like a laborer. The woman beside her shook her head. Only God knows. Rich people they do things way poor man no go understand. It was the same every Sunday. By 6:30 a.m., Madame Kem would step out of her mansion in Udoka Estate, barefoot, with only a small Bible in her hand. Her security team would jump into their cars, following her silently as she took each step down the long road to St. Matthew's Cathedral in Imuru. She never greeted anyone, never paused to rest. Journalists had tried for months to get a word out of her. Her staff remained tight-lipped, her family refused interviews, and even her church members had given up trying to understand her strange routine. Some said it was a vow to God. Others whispered about hidden madness or spiritual bondage. But no one knew for sure. One bright Sunday morning, a young journalist named Somadina decided to follow her quietly. He didn't bring a camera crew. He dressed like an ordinary citizen, wearing simple jeans and a cap. He followed from a distance, watching her walk steadily through muddy puddles and potholes, never once lifting her eyes from the road ahead. Halfway through the journey, she suddenly stopped. "Why are you following me?" Her voice was calm, but the weight of it stopped Somadina in his tracks. I'm sorry, Ma," he stammered. "I'm just a reporter. I didn't mean to intrude. I wanted to know why you walk." She turned to him slowly, her eyes red, not with anger but with something deeper. "You want to know why I walk," she said quietly. "Come, walk with me." Somadina blinked in disbelief. "Mommy." "Yes, if you have the strength, walk. If not, go back." He followed her in silence. For 2 miles, neither of them spoke. But when they reached the foot of the old bridge near Oi Market, she stopped again. "My daughter died right here," she said. Somadina froze. What happened?" "She was very young, beautiful, bright, full of life. She wanted to go to church that day. But I was too busy, business, meetings, flights. I told the driver to take her instead." Tears rolled down her cheeks now. "There was a brake failure. The car veered off this bridge. She died instantly. I never got to say goodbye. Never saw her body. I was on a private jet when the call came in." Somadina stood frozen, his mouth open, unable to speak. "Since then, every Sunday I walk. I walk the road she never returned from. Past the same places she did. I don't deserve to be comfortable. I don't deserve a car ride." She wiped her face gently. "Maybe one day, when I've suffered enough, I'll forgive myself." "Do you think God will forgive you?" Somadina finally asked, his voice trembling. "I don't know," she whispered. "But I know that if I walk long enough, maybe, just maybe, He will let me see her again in my dreams." Somadina couldn't hold it in anymore. He sat beside her and wept, tears not just for her daughter, but for every time he judged someone without knowing their pain. She stood up gently, brushing dust off her white gown as the wind picked up. The convoy waited patiently behind, as if even the engines understood the weight of the moment. Without a word, she began walking again. Somadina wiped his eyes and followed closely, no longer a journalist on a mission, but a witness to grief wrapped in silence. As they approached the old Anglican cemetery by Nquo Road, she paused again. I buried her here. No media. No photographs. Just me, a casket, and regret. She pointed to a small, overgrown plot. There was no marble headstone, just a low, weather-worn cross and a faded picture of a smiling little girl. She loved sunflowers, so I planted one each year. But they never grow, Madame Kem whispered, her voice cracking. Maybe the ground is angry at me. So Medina knelt, reaching out to touch the soil gently. She was beautiful, and I think the ground is just waiting for peace to come. Like you. Madame Kem looked down at him for a long moment. You speak like someone who has lost too. I did, he admitted. My brother. I blamed myself for years. They stood together for a while, letting the silence between them speak louder than words. By the time they reached the outskirts of Umuru, church bells had already started ringing. People were already heading toward the cathedral. And then the whispering began. She's here again. With her escort. Still walking in. What kind of rich woman does this? But who's that young man beside her today? Inside the church, the priest paused as she entered. As always, she took the last pew. Never the front, never under the fan. She knelt slowly, closed her eyes, and said nothing. So Medina knelt beside her, unsure of what to pray for, but certain he'd never be the same. After service, the priest approached her. My daughter today. You are not alone, he said gently, glancing at Medina. Would you consider sharing your story with the congregation? She hesitated. A lump formed in her throat. Her hand trembled as she stood. She walked to the altar, facing a sea of eyes. Every step I take, every drop of sweat I feel, it is not for drama or pride. It is the weight of memory. Of a child who deserved more than I gave. Her voice cracked. I walk, because I cannot forget. And I walk, to remind you all that pain wears many dresses. Even lace. Whispers stopped. Tears flowed. Even the children went silent. And for the first time in years, as she stood there beneath the cross, Madame Kemdelem felt something warm and strange spread across her chest. It wasn't forgiveness, not yet. But it was the beginning. So Medina watched her quietly, then pulled out his recorder from his pocket and turned it off. This story wasn't for the world anymore. It was hers. The next day, headlines across Nigeria exploded, not from Medina's pen, but from church members who couldn't hold back their awe. Social media lit up with blurry pictures and teary captions. The richest woman in Anambra walks to church in memory of her daughter. See why she refuses to ride a car every Sunday. Millionaire's walk of pain touches hearts nationwide. Madame Kemdelem hadn't planned to go viral. In fact, she didn't even own a personal social media account. But within 24 hours, the story swept through TikTok, Instagram, and Facebook like wildfire. People across Nigeria, across Africa, were stunned. Some cried. Others were humbled. A few couldn't believe it and called it a publicity stunt. By Tuesday morning, her estate gate was flooded with visitors. She watched them from her bedroom window, heart trembling. Her personal assistant, Eduora, knocked softly and entered. Ma, should I ask them to leave? Madame Kem turned from the window. No. Let them be, she said. At her business office, things had changed too. Her staff, once fearful of her cold silence, now greeted her with warmth and awe. Even her board of directors, men in suits who once thought her strange, began asking about charity partnerships and outreach projects. That afternoon, Medina visited again, this time without a pen or camera. Why are you here again? She asked. raising an eyebrow but smiling faintly. "I don't want an interview," he replied. "I just want to walk with you this Sunday." She looked at him for a long time. "Then wear shoes you can remove. Because I don't walk in comfort." That Sunday the road was different. So Medina walked beside Madame Kem in silence. As they passed the bridge, she whispered, "For the first time, this walk doesn't feel as heavy." He nodded. "Because you're not alone anymore." When they reached the church that Sunday, the bells didn't ring. Instead, the choir stood outside, singing a special hymn for her daughter. Madame Kem collapsed to her knees. As the service ended, the priest came forward and held her hand. "My daughter, you have to be strong, take it easy on yourself." She looked up slowly. After church, Madame Kemdalim returned home and sat alone in her parlor. She reached into her drawer and pulled out a worn photo of her daughter. Bright smile, white eyes, gone too soon. Then a knock echoed from the gate. "Ma, someone is here. She says she's from Lagos. Claims she knew your daughter." Madame Kem frowned. "At this hour?" They brought the visitor in, a young woman in a yellow blouse. "I'm sorry to disturb you," she began, voice trembling. "But I needed to see you face to face. I've lived with this truth for too long." Madame Kem stared. "Who are you?" "I was the nurse on duty the night your daughter died." She opened her bag and brought out a faded hospital tag and a photo, one Madame Kem had never seen. "I'm sorry, Ma," the nurse said. "Your daughter didn't die. She was switched." Madame Kem froze. "What?" The nurse nodded, tears in her eyes. "It was a black market baby ring. I've lived in shame ever since. I tracked her down last year. She's alive." The woman placed a final envelope on the table. Inside were documents and a picture. A grown girl. Same eyes. Smile. Madame Kem's hands shook. "Where is she now?" "She's coming here. Tonight." And just then, headlights flashed at the gate. The iron gate creaked open and a slim young woman stepped out of the back seat of a taxi, looking beautiful and elegant, but it wasn't her clothes that caught Madame Kemdalim's breath. It was her face. She looked like Amarachi. Not a resemblance. It was as if time had folded, and her daughter had returned from the grave. The girl stood still, eyes wide. Unsure. Scared. Madame Kem rose to her feet, heart pounding. She walked slowly toward the girl, knees weak, vision blurry with tears. "Amarachi," her voice cracked. The girl nodded slowly. "They said, you're my mother." Neither of them moved for a second. Then, like a dam breaking, Madame Kem ran to her, arms wrapping tightly around the girl. She held her like she'd never let go. And in that moment, the pain of many years, the guilt, the walking, the loneliness, washed away. "I thought I lost you," Madame Kem whispered. "You didn't," the girl replied, crying into her shoulder. "I've been looking for you my whole life." Inside the house, Eduora and Medina watched. The journalist's mouth was slightly open, stunned. "You're going to write this?" Eduora asked, wiping tears from her face. "No," he replied. "This is not a story anymore. This is a resurrection." For the first time in years, the mansion echoed with laughter. Real laughter. Amarachi told stories of her childhood in an orphanage in Yaba, her love for books, and the strange feeling she'd always had that something, or someone, was missing. Madame Kem showed her daughter's childhood photos, sang her lullabies she used to hum alone in her walk to church. And when Sunday came again, she still walked the 10 miles. But this time not alone. At the church gate, Madame Kem turned to her daughter. "Do you know why I walk, Amarachi?" "Yes," she said, holding her mother's hand. "'Cause love walks, even through fire." Thank you for watching till the end. Share your thoughts about this story in the comments section. Share this story with your loved ones and don't forget to like and subscribe to this channel if you haven't done so. Until I bring another story.